If not, we couldn't export. If we see a dollar which is 135, stay like this, if we see the high wheat price, I don't think we would be able to export, or France need any export of cargoes, bulk cargoes to India.
Hakan, can we have your inputs, please?
Yeah, I fully agree with Ms. I think we are in an area where the macro factors affect the pricing completely. When we started in Russia this year, the currency was around 28.5 rubles to a dollar. And for those who were in Barcelona would remember in the panel discussion, the overall P pricing was expected to be very bullish. And I think Russian currency from 28.5 went all the way to gradually, not, I'm talking in a couple of weeks, past 30, then 31, then 32. So this obviously was in favor of the lower prices. I mean, that's why Russia remained this year as a continuous supplier and at prices much lower than the other origins. Mies has done a very good presentation earlier. He has given the numbers, so I don't want to go over that. But the general tendency from farmers' point of view is to diversify more from grain into special crops. The main reason is they are getting affected by the decisions of the policymakers. We have seen the wheat is a strategic product, so any decision on export ban or export quota is affecting the farmers directly. Whereas pea or chickpea, these are special crops that are not regularized by the policymakers. So we see a tendency towards farming more of the pulses. And these last 2 years, the markets have supported, the demand supported the production. And if you look at the Russian chickpea figure, I would tend to disagree with the number provided by Stats on the chickpea, which showed about 43,000 tons. I think the chickpea production in Russia was over 100,000 tons this year. And
and the peas production?
Pea production, I agree, it was around 1.5, 1.6 in my opinion. And I also agree with me comment that we might see this year a little over 2 million tons. But right now in Russia, I mean, everything is frozen, including the vessels with the cargo on it is frozen in the sea. You can go for skating on Azov Sea, or for that matter, it's the same situation in Ukraine. All the ports are frozen. And it's difficult to make an assessment to your next question as to where the prices are going to be and the new crop, because this condition has not been seen for a very long time, and it seems it's not going to go away quickly. So we hope that the ice will defrost first, and then, the vessels that are stuck, which is more than 30, 35 vessels, can go out. And so we can talk more on the new crop pricing. I'll feel more comfortable to put some values when we see some progress on weather conditions in Russia. And that probably for those who will be in Dubai will get the closest estimate.
Correct. Thank you, Hakan. Some very important comments by Hakan. Hakan highlighted the fact that in today's day and time, it is not the supply demand alone which drives prices. It is not the supply demand which makes the markets bullish or bearish, but it is macro issues which we need to watch. And most importantly, the movement of currency that needs to be monitored very closely outside of just the traditional way that we would do our supply demand analysis. Very impressive shipments out of Russia. I think the Indian trading community was pleasantly surprised at the quantity that came out of Russia this year, and seeing the numbers of last year of 1.5 to 1.75 million tons. And as Hakan predicts that if the snow melts in time, this production go up to 2 million tons. So that is a big jump, and we can fast see another Canada being created in Russia itself as an important origin. With this, I'll take you over to Chad. Chad, your comments on the fact that, of course, what you think on the production jump in Russia, and your comments on the Canadian supply-demand situation.
Thank you. I guess from a Canadian standpoint, a lot has been mentioned already in the previous presentations, but as everyone knows, the stocks are very tight in the current situation. I guess with that, the prices on the origin side of things remain very, very firm. Producers just are not willing to sell at today's prices. There's been basically a little bit of a dry spell here over the past few months, a healthy spread between where producers are willing to sell and where the demand actually sits. So there's been a lack of activity over the past few months. As we all know, the exports out of Canada year to date are very, very strong. So that really doesn't put any pressure on the producer side to sell today. That's why they're holding back. Just to mention cash flow as well. Cash flow is very, very strong, not only on the pulse side of things, but from canola and other commodities in Canada. So with the farmer being cash rich, again, it does not relate into any panic selling from his side. And I guess finally, just from a supply standpoint, looking into new crop, with 2.1 million metric ton production this past year, I believe acreage is definitely going to increase. It will increase on the back of support and basically margin to the farmer. Ultimately, we need to be paying a competitive price in order to retain that acreage. I think we need acreage of about 3 million tons in Canada to supply the demand. Something interesting which has been mentioned earlier is the change to the Canadian Wheat Board legislation in Canada that will change the dynamic of, I guess, what gets planted and ultimately the competitiveness of the certain crops in Canada. In saying that, we need to be competitive with price. Right now, current prices, I guess CFR on a FOB standpoint in Canada are around 380, FOB Stowe Trim, West Coast, Vancouver. That relates into about a price of about 425 CFR India, and that's an old crop price today. For new crop, there's been, I guess, very little action on the new crop side of things because it is still a little bit early. However, if we can get to a price of 400 plus, I would say, on a CFR basis, we will definitely get to that 2.7 to 3 million acreage standpoint in Canada, which again, like I mentioned, we will need, and that should support the pulse acreage on the Canadian standpoint. Just a little bit on the demand. I've obviously been in India, and we've been focused on the Indian demand, which has been a little bit slow over the past few months. It was mentioned earlier, but China's becoming a very large player from Canadian pea standpoint. To date, they've taken roughly about 450,000 tons of yellow and green peas from Canada, and they're expected to hit around the 600,000 ton mark for this crop year. To date, India has taken about 630,000 tons of green and yellow peas year to date. And S&D, based on my numbers, we are expecting India still to take about 900,000 to 1 million tons. Some of that is going to be compensated, obviously, by the 250 to 300,000 tons that was shipped from European origins early in the year. But we still think that there's a ways to go, and again, stocks are very tight in Canada.
Thanks, Chad. That was very insightful. Friends, Chad is talking in terms of shipment of the Canadian crop year. Am I right? That is August to July?
Sorry?
Those numbers were of the Canadian crop year.
That is correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the numbers that I gave is year to date. So it is basically takes us up to the end of February with what we know today in the vessel lineup or business that's already on the books.
So that's a very impressive shipping program, a very aggressive